Hello, people. How's it going? Well, it's sunny outside here in Minnesota, but it's still cold. Welcome to Minnesota in March. Anyway, today is the history. This is a history video. Studying history, talking about books. Two of my favorite things. Itchy, dry skin. So, what is a historian? Well, bluntly placed, it's basically a storyteller. That is what a historian is. That's what Homer is. Homer is historian slash folklorist slash telling a story. I mean, the Battle of Troy did actually happen. It is based on an actual battle. So historians are storytellers. They're people who take material and try to either write it as strictly fiction or strictly nonfiction, I should say. Like Anthony Everett and a few other authors whose names I completely went blank on. Or like Homer, which is more story than history, but still, it's still a historian. It's still a writer. It's still a story. It's still a telling of a story. The basic idea is a historian is someone who's telling you a story that they were not there, for the most part, who were not there to actually see the events they're talking about. I mean, they are. I mean, that's basically what a historian is. He's a storyteller who should be dealing with strictly the facts and the evidence and the actual details and the actual everything. Unfortunately, we have writers who think they're historians and are nothing but revisionists who just want to promote something. But I won't go into that. But history is a story. It is telling a story. It's just nonfiction. It's telling the facts of a story. It's telling the information of it's a nice day, even though it is cold. But a historian is telling, or should be telling, the facts of events, of people, of why things happen. And if they aren't, then they have basically become propaganda, which is a lot of history books actually are. Let's be honest. Even if they don't mean to be, they are. I mean, they are. Unfortunately, too many historians think they're dealing strictly with history, and they end up kind of siding with one side or the other. It's unavoidable. That's human nature. That's what historians should be avoiding, but that's not what historians are going to do. It's just not the way it is. I mean, it just isn't. Recorder of events, pretty much they are. I mean, they are supposed to record the actual events and not make up stuff like, I think it's Livy. I think it was Livy, I believe, who, I got my books here because I'm going to bring these up eventually. I believe it's Livy. Yeah, Livy, yeah. War with Hannibal. Actually wrote, the reason Hannibal won was he had wizards. Wizards. He didn't win because he was a better general at the time. He had wizards. Now, that's questionable history, but that's what he wrote. Now, would we question Livy? Yes, we would. We should always question a historian. Even historians that we think are trying to tell us 100% history, we really should double-check their information. That's why I have so many books, because I like to double-check things. I don't believe everything that one author will tell me. I mean, I love Bruce Cotton as a Civil War historian, but I'm not going to take every single thing he says as facts just because he said it. Now, I like the guy. More modern-day historian of the Civil War would be Stephen W. Sears. Great historian, great writer of the Civil War, but I'm still going to double-check his facts and his information. So, I mean, why didn't I put the same question down twice? Kind of. I put recorder and explainer of facts, which technically they shouldn't be together. They should always go together. You should be able to explain it and record it, and it should be just the facts, just the information. And that's a lot to ask of a writer, of a historian, of someone who's into the subject, because they're always going to have their biases. You can't escape, particularly autobiographies. You always know in autobiographies a historian or a person who was actually there portraying themselves as a historian are going to have their biases. You cannot write a history without biases. You cannot write a history without your viewing the way it happened or wanting it to happen without getting in the way. The ideal historian does not exist. But historians do try to be factual. They do try to be, straightforward with the information. And that's what they should do. I mean, a historian is supposed to tell you what happened, who was there, why it happened, get into the nuances of things, dig deep into the story of things. And they're telling a story, and whether it's just nonfiction or fiction, history is still a story because it's about people. The human experience is a story. The human anything is a story. But that's what a historian is. A historian is a storyteller. He's an explainer of events. He's a recorder of events. He should be. Now, I've read history books where basically I'm getting someone's opinion and not history. I'm not going to say those people right now because I can't remember. Mainly because their books probably bored me and I didn't finish it. But people like Stephen Sears, excellent writer. Anthony Everett, excellent writer. Yes, I do have to look over there because I've looked at the names. Adrian Goldsworthy on Roman history, excellent writer. Michael Grant writes a lot of history books about the Roman Empire, about Greeks, about Jewish history. They're all good, but I don't 100% agree with what he writes because his biases are there. I mean, he writes about Peter and Paul, but he doesn't believe either one about them, but he writes about them. So you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt and realize what you're dealing with. But a historian is a storyteller, as I keep repeating, because I don't think people as I think that's the problem. History is taught events, people, place. That's it. That's why people don't like history. That's why people get bored with history. Because it becomes stale and cardboardish and one-dimensional when you only just, this person was there and that event happened and this happened to them, instead of not getting inside the nuances and getting inside their heads, getting inside why, and even digging deeper. I loved history in high school, and I loved history when I took it in college. I like the teachers who dug deeper than the superficial things of history. I can spot a superficial book on history a mile away. It will read like one. It will bore me silly, and I won't be able to finish it. I don't run into any of those books, but they do exist. A historian needs to be fair. He needs to try as hard as he can without letting his biases and his prejudices and how he wishes it had been. I mean, I can name one historian who is known as a revisionist, but at the same time, I find his stuff actually not bad. It's not revised enough where it bothers me. I'll talk about him some other time, but not right now. But historians of today have a lot. And I'm going to get to the other point because I have a lot of books I want to show. Well, not a lot, but enough. Greek and Roman writers. But the Greek and Roman historians is where history began. Technically, European histories, or the idea to write them, began with the Greeks and the Romans. I mean, whether you agree with everything Livy said, or Herodotus said, or Caesar, I'm looking at the names up there, and that's why I put the books. They're still historians. They're still the people who were there, or were writing about facts that they were at least close to that timeline, the timeline zone. I mean, anyway, let's maybe this will be better. Let's see. I mean, like Herodotus, his history is. Yes, I have all this stuff up here, people. You're just gonna have to deal with it. I didn't put this very organized. I mean, Herodotus. He is. His main theme is the heroic and successful struggle of a small, divided Greece against the mighty empire of Persia, with its underlying conflicts between the absolutism of the East and the free institutions of the West. Herodotus has been called the father of lies, as well as the father of history. Yeah, he had a tendency to exaggerate. But it was a feature of his method when evidence was lacking to record popular belief, and the result is one of the most entertaining books in the world. It's worth reading. It may not be 100% accurate history, but it is worth reading. Other books I have, Lives of the Caesars. These are all Penguin classics, by the way. Lives of the Caesars. I don't know, is that in focus? Looks like it's out of focus when it's on the side. But, the lives of the late Caesars, the first part of the Augustan history with the newly compiled lives of Nerva and Trajan. From the Emperor's Trajan to Heliogabalus, I've only been asked me to say that. Written in the 4th century by an anonymous author pretending to be a team of 6 much earlier biographers, it contains a solid core of historical facts, but also makes lavish use of fake documents, and includes many fictitious but highly entertaining anecdotes about the luxury and depravity of the emperors. In other words, it'd be fun to read. Publius, The Rise of the Roman Empire. I brought this up before. Another good book. Roman conquered the Mediterranean. Publius was himself a Greek and an active contemporary participant in the political relations with Rome, wrote the 40 books of his universal history, primarily to chronicle and account for the Roman conquest of Greece between 200 and 167 BC. The Greeks and the Romans are the fathers and the foundation of the modern historian, of all historians. Yes, other nations, other countries, other spheres of the planet wrote histories, but the Greeks and the Romans was the Western, European and European civilization's core beginning of history, of writing history, of recording history. This is Suetonius to 12 Caesars. Another good book. I forgot I had this book when I made my list. Animus Marcellius, the later Roman Empire, AD 354 to 378, which would mean that Julian is in here somewhere. Julian the Apostate, my favorite emperor of Rome. But another book I have. Then Sallust, another excellent history book. These are all good books, even if they're not 100% accurate history. They're still important documents of where the craft and the idea of writing history down came from. It didn't come from anywhere else. It came from the Greeks and the Romans, like to borrow things for a long time. Caesar's Civil War. I can't find right now his conquest of Gaul. It's the only one I have right now is the Civil War. Why does that look like it's not coming in focus? Well, I'm looking at it. It looks unfocused in the camera. Hopefully it's in focus. And there's Livy, which I also have Livy, the early history of Rome. I've already mentioned Livy's Hannibal War with Hannibal. Then Thucydides, History of the Peloponnesian War. My point is that the Greek and Roman authors, whether you like it or not, whether you believe what they wrote is accurate or whatever, they are the foundation of Western civilization. They are the foundation of Western culture. They are the foundation of Western ideas and religion and philosophy and history. We seem to be living in an age now where, European history is a bad thing. Well, no, it's not. It's a good thing. It has its imperfections. It certainly does that. But, books I would also recommend reading. Oh, On the Good Life. I forgot that. Some of the books I forgot that I don't have, I was going to mention. I wrote them down. Cicero's On the Good Life. There's a good biography on Cicero by Anthony Everett. I bought that yesterday. Xenophon, The Persian Expedition. A lot of these books I used to have in the other library before I lost it. I had Xenophon's Persian Expedition, about recent Persia. Tacitus, The Annals of Imperial Rome, another good book. Arrian, The Campaigns of Alexander. I already said that one already. Let's see, did I not mention all these? Okay, I mentioned all those. That's good. Oh, by the way, I bought this book yesterday. Same author, Anthony Everett, of Alexander the Great. Might be interesting. Other books I could recommend from Adrian Goldsworthy is that one. In the Name of Rome, a very good book. Pax Romana, another very good book. My favorite emperor. I'm sorry. Julian the Apostate was my favorite emperor of Rome. I like the Gore Vidal historical biography, even though he really rewrote a lot of history. It's still a good fictional novel. But Julian was interesting. He tried to take Rome back from the Christians and put it back into a pagan empire. It wasn't going to happen, Julian. But nice try. My favorite emperor of Rome. I just find him interesting. But I mean, those are some of the books. I mean, those are the Greek and Roman books, anyway. I already showed you this one already. I'll show it again anyway. The Caesar book, when he wrote his Conquest of Gaul and the Civil Wars. I mean, Caesar wrote propaganda. Well, let's be honest, people. Caesar's books were propaganda. They're good history. They're interesting. I mean, but they were propaganda. They were propaganda pieces, and that's why he wrote them. He wasn't writing history. He was writing propaganda. He was writing historically accurate / a lot of propaganda, if that makes any sense. I have a lot of other Roman books on history, and one on Hadrian, one on Augustus by Anthony Everett. I'm having a hard time seeing my glasses today. We have Caligula over there. I have books on Michael Grant. I used to have Edward Gibbon's Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, but I don't know where it went. But anyway, I will end this video because we're already at almost 17 minutes, and I don't want to make these too long, even though I'd like to make them interesting, hopefully. I see that someone's sending me stuff I don't want. There's got to be a way of blocking these people who keep sending me this crap. Anyway, but I believe that's today's lecture. I'll probably do a part 2 of this probably next time. I'll try to get some more books to show, to tell. But the Penguin Classic books on the Roman historians and the Greek historians are worth reading. They are fascinating. They're fun to read. Easy to read up to a point. I mean, they're not hard. You just have to realize that what you're dealing with in a lot of ways is history that they are mingling with a lot of stories and a lot of propaganda and this, that, and the other. I mean, let me think. One book literally is supposed to be propaganda. I think it was Polybius. I believe is. I have to check, but I'm pretty sure one of those, he did it on purpose. But anyway, have a good time, people. Behave yourselves. Stay out of trouble. Read a history book. Read a book. Please subscribe, post, comments, and subscribe. Thank you. Later. Later.